Welcome back to France Made Simple, the podcast where I demystify life in France and debunk some of the many myths that surround living here. So, I don't know what the weather's like where you are, but here it's suddenly feeling like spring has sprung. My bulbs that I lovingly planted are all popping up. There's primroses in the verges and the hedgerows, and it's all looking really rather lovely. And we've been out in the garden getting our veggie patch ready and planning other things to do around the house for the summer. And one of the things that many people want to do when they move to France, and one of the best things about owning a French property, is not only being able to spend more time outdoors, but having the space to do that and create different seating areas around your house. It's a luxury that lots of people in the UK just simply don't have. And whether you're on holiday here or you're living here permanently, many of us find we're spending much more time outside, whether it's gardening, pottering around, looking after your llamas, or just relaxing by the pool. All of this is really relaxing, but the best thing ever, I think, is eating outside. And once the days get longer and lighter and the warmer weather really kicks in, eating outside is one of those just amazing pleasures in life. I would rather eat anything outside than inside. I don't know why, but it always tastes better. But struggling with a temperamental barbecue that refuses to light and lugging your glasses and crockery from the kitchen and the patio can be a real pain in the arse. So, what's the solution? Simple. Install an outdoor kitchen. So this might sound like a big project and a major undertaking and expensive to boot. But if you plan it and think about it and, spend some time getting your kind of vision board or inspiration going, you can create a really fantastic outdoor cooking and eating space for a very minimal amount of money. Obviously, it's how long is a piece of string. You can go completely wild. And I have visited outdoor kitchens that were bigger and better than my indoor kitchen, complete with gas-fired planchas, you name it. But for most of us, we're not in that league. So the first thing you need to think about is the location. Now, you might have a space right by the kitchen itself that lends itself to becoming an outdoor kitchen, or as the French call it, a cuisine d'été. And in that case, so much the better. But even so, you might prefer to site your new outdoor dining space by the pool or in another part of the garden. And, this is obviously going to depend hugely on your house, your setup, and your lifestyle. But in any case, I would say the first thing to do is to take a large notepad. You know me, I like a notepad and a pen, and make some notes on the suitability of what you think might be your preferred site, because you might start by thinking that this place is a good idea and then end up thinking, no, we need to put it in that place. So what do you need to ask yourself? So the types of questions you need to think about are, is it flat already, or are we going to need to level it and landscape? Now, if the site's perfect in every other way, it could be worth leveling the ground, but this is going to add to your cost, and there may be a better alternative option. Then you need to think, are there services nearby? How much is it going to cost me to run water and possibly electric to the site? Where does it face? Is it south, southwest? So these are all very basic things which will help you determine the location of where you're going to put your outside kitchen. Think about, is there shade nearby? Is there too much shade? What time of day will we generally be using it? And obviously, this is just a really basic list. It's not exhaustive by any means. It's kind of like a starting point to help clarify your thinking process and think about where might be the best place to pop that kitchen. And, I wouldn't rush that decision-making stage unless it's really obvious. Take your time, because the location is the most important part of the project, really. And the next stage, once you've decided on where it's going, is to decide what you're going to have. Now, this again is very personal, and it's one that's going to vary from, household to household, and it will also vary according to your budget. Now, given that an outdoor kitchen can vary in terms of being a whole separate structure, like the one I talked about, with appliances, cupboards, worktops, and everything else that you might find in a normal kitchen, to a simple built-in barbecue with a bit of storage and food prep space alongside, there is obviously going to be a huge amount of variation. I would say that it's a good idea to think about installing some type of cover as protection from both the sun and the rain, and wind. And this could be a proper roof, or simply a kind of wooden type pergola thing, which can be covered with foliage. I have a friend who's got a sort of wooden pergola tacked onto the outside of her house, and the wisteria has grown over it to such an extent that in the summer, apart from in the heaviest rain, you can sit outside underneath it and be completely dry. So foliage can be good. So think about all that, and then think about whether you're going to do the work yourself or whether you're going to call in a local artisan. And I think you need to also think about how the kitchen is going to integrate both with the outside space and the property as a whole. I've seen kitchens that work very well because they're simply an extension of the house, and it's almost like a seamless transition from the inside to the outside. And other things that look like they've just been plonked in the middle of a field and don't work at all. So you need to think about that. And I really love the idea of leaving space for raised flower beds, which can be planted up with sort of edible herbs and anything that you might want to chuck on the barbecue. So rosemary, thyme, that kind of stuff, basil, parsley. And that's another really good way to link the kitchen with the garden. And you can even choose a theme for your kitchen, which will sort of coordinate or complement the interior of your house. And this sort of helps bed in the kitchen and make it really feel part of the house. So it's like that extension of living space. So now you need to think about what the kitchen's going to contain. I would say there are 4 main areas to think about here. You need to think about storage, preparation, cooking, and clearing away. Now, if you've got lots of space and lots of money, I would say the ideal is for the external kitchen to be completely self-contained. And in this case, you're going to need storage for outside crockery and glasses, which it can be really good to not, to have that second set. It doesn't need to be expensive. But you can also, if you've got a pool, have plastic glasses, plastic wine goblets. You don't need to worry about breakages or grandma's special dinner service getting smashed on the patio kind of thing. But that all takes space. And then you're going to need storage for cooking implements and a sort of basic selection of condiments, spices, whatever you use when you're cooking. And again, that's really good to have a second set for outside. So you're not sitting down and somebody says, "Oh, where's the pepper? Oh, where's the pepper grinder? It's still in the kitchen," and somebody has to run inside. Almost all French supermarkets now, as well as shops like Action, Jiffy, Gémeaux, all of that, and they all have a really great ranges of unbreakable table and picnic ware, which is ideal for the outdoor kitchen. The French have always loved their picnics and taken them very seriously. So you'll find almost everything that you need for a picnic, which can then be used in your outdoor kitchen. And during the spring and summer months, or even at the end of the summer, these kind of items they're either on special offer or on promo, as they say in France. So it's a really great opportunity to pick up a bargain. And your outdoor kitchen can also be a really great place to use up some of those treasures that you find at Brookants. You know, if you see that old cupboard or bench or even an old wood burning stove and they're not quite good enough, or, you know, you don't need them in your house, but they're really quite beautiful. They can be painted, restored, and given a new lease of life and used outside. Obviously, if they're wood, you know, the timber's going to need to be protected from the elements, but all of those kind of things are worth thinking about. I really like having an old wood burning stove, which might not be thermally efficient enough to justify being in the house, but can be beautiful and decorative outside as a sort of feature. And, you know, it replaces a fire pit, and on chilly end of summer evenings or at the start of the season, gives you a nice warm focal point to sit round. You can get those sort of traditional milk bottle holders, and they make almost, you know, a mobile drinks cabinet. You can find lovely old baskets and containers, and they can all be used as decorative storage, and gives you an excuse to go around the Brookants and the Vide Grenier. You know, what's not to like? Now, if you can run electricity to your kitchen, a fridge is going to give you much more flexibility. And even a small fridge, having just a small fridge, means that you've always got cold drinks to hand, and you can keep, you know, a sort of a small range of basics in it, such, I don't know, butter, eggs and cheese. Plus, it means you've got a secure storage area to store your meat or fish or whatever you're planning to cook on the barbecue or plancha. And as somebody that has cats that periodically attack anything that's left on a worktop, I'm a great fan of keeping everything in a fridge till the last moment. So that's something to think about. Have you got the space to integrate a small fridge? I would also suggest you get a really decent sized worktop close to the cooking area, because that's going to make prepping and serving food much easier. You know, you can get something cheap and basic from any of the DIY sheds, or you can use reclaimed timber or a marble offcut. You can go a bit wild, not wild. If you want to go wild, you can go wild in your outdoor kitchen, but you can be creative. You know, it doesn't need to be perfect and finished and functional in the same way that your inside kitchen can. It's an ideal opportunity to use things up. Always, I would say, attach a rail to the edge of your worktop, because then you've got space to hang and dry your tea towels. Have a shelf above the working area if you can, for some extra storage space, for things that you want close to hand, whether that's, I don't know, barbecue tongs or spices. You know, it depends on how you cook and what you cook. But it's always a good idea as well to separate the clear up area from the food prep area, if possible. Now, this might mean installing another length of worktop by the sink, but that will make your life a whole lot easier. And, you know, as the outdoor kitchen is often a place where you've got multiple people there who don't know the layout, if you can say, when people offer to help and clear the table, you can just say, oh, just chuck it all over there by the sink. It makes the whole kind of entertaining process a lot more relaxed. I think guests eating outside tend to muck in and help in a way that guests maybe don't inside the house. So you've got to think, how can I make this easy for people to help prepare and clean up? And I think, you know, the really exciting part, obviously, of having an outdoor kitchen is the cooking. So you need to choose how and what you're going to cook on. And this is really important. And again, it's quite a personal choice. Now, a barbecue, whether it's gas or charcoal, is going to be kind of the option for almost everybody. But you can also add a plancha or a hot plate. Gives you a bit more flexibility in terms of things you can cook more easily on that. And I'd also recommend installing a gas ring, because this, you know, if you're into outdoor cooking, we can really expand your repertoire with a gas ring. Plus, if you've got an all-electric kitchen and there's a power cut inside the house, having an external gas ring, even if you don't have one in the kitchen, is incredibly bloody useful. It's saved our bacon on many an occasion. It just means that you can boil water, you've got one ring to cook on, and it's definitely worth factoring in. You can buy individual gas rings really cheaply. If you want a large one, that's going to enable you to cook stuff like you can make a massive paella. Smaller ones can be really useful for sauces, boiling water, so on and so forth. All you need to do is connect that to a gas bottle, which you can hide very discreetly in one of your antique cupboards that you've just bought in your local depot vent. And if you are going to use wood, whether that's for cooking on your barbecue, and you can use wood, so you don't have to go and buy charcoal, or as a heat source, maybe in your fire pit or your reclaimed vintage Godin stove, I think it's a really nice idea to create a bit of built-in storage for your wood, because it's both practical, you've got it to hand close by, and it looks nice. And the same goes for bottles, whether we're talking alcohol or soft drinks. They look much nicer displayed in a wine rack, which can be built into the kitchen area. You can really get a bit imaginative and creative here and have some fun, I think, with designing your outdoor kitchen. So summer is approaching, and it's now, I would say, about perfect time to start planning this outdoor cooking area. And once your kitchen's in and installed, even if it's only a basic thing to start with, start with the basics. You can always add to it. You're just going to be able to enjoy the summer so much more in France, because preparing meals outdoors is a massive pleasure, and eating outside is wonderful. So I hope you will have been inspired and enthused by this episode enough to run outside right now, even if you do need to put a coat on because it's still a bit chilly. Have a look around your property and think to yourself, where could we install an outdoor kitchen? Anyway, thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed that. Thank you, as always, to our sponsors, Fab French Insurance, and I will see you next time. Bye.